Story 1: The Echo Convoy. Thomas Blackwood's truck was being followed by trucks that hadn't existed yet, and their headlights were getting closer through time. He first noticed them at mile marker 156 on the ice road, 6 sets of headlights in his mirror that vanished when he looked directly at them, reappeared when he looked away. The lights were wrong. Too blue, too bright. They cast shadows forward toward Thomas, which meant they were behind him, but somehow also ahead, which meant they were coming from a direction that wasn't space. They were coming from wind. Thomas had been hauling supplies to remote Arctic research stations for 14 years. Food, fuel, equipment across frozen lakes and tundra from Yellowknife to stations, so isolated they didn't appear on maps. He'd driven in impossible conditions, had survived whiteouts where visibility dropped to zero, had crossed ice so thin he could hear water sloshing beneath his tires, had driven 36 hours straight when storms closed the roads behind him and stopping meant freezing to death. But he'd never been chased by his own future before. The date was March 2nd, 2024. Time was 11:43 p.m. Temperature was minus 41 degrees. The ice road stretched endlessly ahead, a white line through black void. No moon, no stars, just headlights illuminating ice and darkness beyond the light. The convoy behind him, the Echo Convoy Thomas had started thinking of them, was gaining. He could hear them now, not through his ears, through the ice. The vibrations of their engines transmitted through frozen water, through his tires, up through his chassis into his spine. He felt them more than heard them. 6 trucks, all Peterbilts, all the same model as his, all driving in perfect formation. Thomas pressed his accelerator. His speedometer read 65 kilometers per hour. The sensation was 80. But the Echo Convoy matched his speed exactly. Stayed the same distance behind, not chasing, following, shadowing, tracking. He grabbed his CB. This is Thomas Blackwood, northbound on Tibet-Contueto Winter Road, mile marker 161. I've got 6 trucks behind me with no transponder signals. Anyone else seeing traffic? Static, then a voice, his own voice. This is Thomas Blackwood, northbound on Tibet-Contueto Winter Road, mile marker 161. I've got 6 trucks behind me. The message repeated, exact wording, exact inflection. Thomas was hearing his own CB broadcast echoed back to him, but the echo was coming before the original. He heard the repeat before he'd finished speaking. Cause was following effect. Time was running backward. Thomas released the mic, looked at his dashboard clock. The digital display flickered. 11:43 p.m., 11:44 p.m., 11:43 p.m., 11:44 p.m. Time was stuttering, skipping. The road was causing temporal distortions. He'd heard rumors about this. Trucker legends. Stories about sections of ice road where physics got weird, where compasses spun, where GPS coordinates drifted, where time didn't flow properly. Most drivers dismissed it as exhaustion hallucinations, sleep deprivation, isolation psychosis. But Thomas was wide awake, alert. He de-slept 6 hours before starting this run. This was real. The Echo Convoy was closer now, close enough that Thomas could see details in his mirror. 6 identical Peterbilts, red paint, same cargo configuration, same company logo. All of them were his truck, all of them were driven by him. 6 Thomas Blackwoods sitting behind 6 steering wheels, faces identical, eyes forward. No, not identical, different ages. The Thomas in the lead Echo truck looked younger, maybe 25. The Thomas in the rear truck looked ancient, 70, 80 years old. The others were intermediate ages, 30, 40, 50, 60. A convoy of Thomas Blackwood spanning decades, all driving the same road simultaneously. Thomas understood with sudden clarity. The ice road wasn't just geographically isolated. It was temporally isolated, cut off from normal time. Here past and future existed simultaneously. All versions of Thomas who'd ever driven this road, who would ever drive this road, were converging into a single moment, a single location. Time was collapsing into now. The road ahead split, not physically, temporally. Thomas could see multiple roads overlaid on each other. One road was ice, normal ice, the road as it existed in March 2024. Another road was water, the same location in summer, unfrozen. Another road was tundra, the route before the ice formed. Another road was glacier, the landscape 10,000 years ago. All versions of the road existed simultaneously, stacked, occupying the same space from different times. Thomas's truck was vibrating, not from rough ice, from temporal friction, from grinding against other moments. The vibration intensified, his dashboard lights flickered. The radio cycled through frequencies on its own, static, voices, music from decades past, news broadcasts that hadn't happened yet. Arctic Ice Road claims another victim, a news anchor said through the radio. Thomas Blackwood, age 63, found frozen in his truck at mile marker 187, appeared to have been driving in circles for days. That was his future, his death, broadcast from years ahead. Another voice, younger. Thomas recognized it as himself at 19. First time driving the winter road, so excited, gonna make good money this season. His past, his first run, broadcast from years behind. Past, present, and future were transmitting simultaneously. Time had lost coherence. The lead Echo truck pulled alongside Thomas. Young Thomas looked at him through the driver's window, mouthed words. "Turn back, don't go to marker 187, that's where it happens." Thomas grabbed his CB. "What happens at marker 187? Young Thomas's lips moved. The convergence, all the Thomas Blackwoods meet, all the versions from all the times, we all arrive at the same moment. And when we all exist in the same place at the same time, we cancel out. We add up to zero, we stop existing. That doesn't make sense. It does in this place. Time here is a circle. You're driving toward your own past. When you meet yourself, you complete the loop. And loops that close completely cease to exist. You'll arrive at marker 187, and there you'll be, every age, every version all together. And then you'll never have been. The second Echo truck pulled up on Thomas's right. 30-year-old Thomas drove it. This version of him had a scar on his left temple. Thomas didn't have that scar, didn't remember getting that scar. But this version of him did, an alternate timeline, a different history. 30-year-old Thomas spoke through the CB. "I turned left at marker 172, took a service road, avoided the convergence, but I drove into a whiteout and crashed, got this scar, barely survived. Maybe that's better than what you're heading toward. Maybe death is better than erasure." More Echo trucks pulled alongside. 40-year-old Thomas, 50-year-old Thomas. Each one had different scars, different injuries, different evidence of choices made and paths taken. They were all Thomas Blackwood, but they were different Thomas Blackwoods, variants from timelines that diverged at decision points. All of them were trying to warn him. All of them had experienced marker 187 from different angles, different times. Ancient Thomas, 80-something, face like weathered leather, pulled alongside, spoke through the CB with a voice like gravel. "I've driven this road for 60 years, driven it hundreds of times. Every time I reach marker 187, every time I see the convergence, every time I watch myself disappear. And then I wake up back at the start, young again, and I drive the same route. We're stuck in a loop, Thomas. We drive this road forever. We always have. We always will." Thomas's hands were shaking. How do I stop it? You can't. The road is the loop. The loop is the road. We're not driving through time. We are time. We're the repeating pattern. We're the echo that sustains itself. Mile marker 175 passed. 178. 182. Marker 187 was close. Thomas could see it ahead, could see something else too. A gathering of lights, dozens of trucks, hundreds, all parked in a circle around marker 187. All of them were his truck. The Echo convoy was growing. More trucks were appearing. Thomas Blackwoods of every age, every timeline, every choice. Some trucks were damaged, crashed versions still driving. Some trucks were pristine. Some were ancient models from decades ago. Some were futuristic designs from decades ahead. All converging on marker 187. Thomas tried to slow down. His foot pressed the brake pedal. The truck didn't slow. It accelerated, pulled toward marker 187 by forces beyond his control, pulled by the convergence's gravity, by time's need to close the loop. He tried to steer away. The wheel wouldn't turn. The road had one direction now, forward, toward the marker, toward the gathering. The circle of trucks grew clearer. Thomas could count them now. 673 trucks, all identical, all parked facing a central point. And in that central point stood a figure. A man. Thomas squinted, trying to see details. The figure was him, but not quite him. It was an amalgamation of all the Thomas Blackwoods, all the versions merged into a single impossible form. Too many arms, each from a different age. Too many faces overlapping like photographs. Too many moments compressed into one body. The convergence, the sum of all Thomas Blackwoods. Thomas's truck rolled into an empty space in the circle, stopped, engine died, lights went dark. He tried to move, couldn't. His body was locked, frozen not by cold but by temporal stasis. He was caught in the moment of convergence, unable to progress forward or backward. The figure in the center turned. All its faces looked at Thomas simultaneously, spoke with all its voices at once. We are Thomas Blackwood. We are every Thomas Blackwood. Odd, we are the driver of the winter road. We are the loop that sustains the road. We drive so the road exists. The road exists so we drive. Cause and effect are the same. Thomas tried to speak. His jaw wouldn't move. His lips were frozen mid-breath. You're afraid of ceasing to exist, the amalgamation said. But you already don't exist. You never did. You're a function of the road, not a person. You're the repetition. You're the echo. You're the pattern that plays itself. The other truck's headlights turned on simultaneously. 673 sets of lights focused on Thomas. The light was blinding, white, pure. It burned away his shadow, burned away his definition. He could feel himself dissolving into the light. Every year a new Thomas Blackwood is born, the amalgamation said. Grows up, becomes a trucker, takes a job driving the winter road. Reaches marker 187, joins the convergence, and the cycle repeats. You're not an individual, you're a stage in a cycle, one iteration of an infinite loop. Thomas's vision was whitening. His thoughts were simplifying. He could feel himself merging with the amalgamation, becoming part of the collective Thomas, losing individuality. But he remembered something, a detail, his daughter. He had a daughter, or would have a daughter, or had had a daughter in some timeline. Sarah, age 11. She'd given him a photo before he left for this run. He'd pinned it to his sun visor. Thomas forced his eyes to move, looked at the sun visor. The photo was there. Sarah, smiling, real. She was real, which meant he was real, which meant he wasn't just an echo. He was a person, a father, someone's dad. The convergence felt his resistance. The amalgamation's voices crescendoed. She's not real, she's another echo. Everyone connected to you is an echo of you. They exist because you exist. When you cease, they cease. All your relationships, all your memories, all your family, echoes. No, Thomas managed to whisper, sound returning to his frozen vocal cords. She's real, I'm real. You're not. I am. Thomas grabbed the steering wheel, felt metal under his palms. Solid, present. He turned the key, the engine roared to life. Impossible, the truck shouldn't be able to start. It was part of the convergence now, part of the loop. But it started. Thomas slammed the transmission into reverse. The Peterbilt rolled backward, backward through space, backward through time. The convergence reached for him, the amalgamation's too many arms extended. But Thomas kept reversing, pulled away from the circle, pulled away from marker 187. The Echo truck's lights went dark. One by one, young Thomas, 30-year-old Thomas, 50-year-old Thomas, all versions fading, ceasing. They'd been projections, possibilities, not actualities. Thomas kept reversing. Mile marker 187, 182, 175, 168. The road was scrolling backward. Time was unwinding. He reached mile marker 156, the point where he'd first noticed the Echo convoy. He stopped, shifted into drive, turned around, started heading back toward Yellowknife, back toward home, back toward his daughter who was real because he believed she was real. The radio crackled, the amalgamation's voices distant now. You can leave, but you'll always wonder, you'll always remember the convergence, and eventually you'll come back. Everyone comes back, the road calls, the loop needs you, you'll return. Thomas drove faster, 60 kilometers per hour, 80, 100, leaving the winter road, leaving the temporal anomaly, leaving the place where time looped. He reached Yellowknife at dawn, parked his truck, called his daughter. She answered on the third ring. Dad, you okay? You sound weird. I'm fine, Thomas said. I'm coming home. I'm done with winter roads, done with ice. I'm taking local routes from now on. I want to be home more. Really, that's great. Thomas smiled. She was real, her voice was real, he was real. But at night, lying in bed, Thomas dreamed of marker 187, dreamed of the convergence, dreamed of 673 versions of himself calling him back. And deep down, he knew the amalgamation was right. Eventually, he'd return to the winter road. Eventually, the loop would close. Because some roads don't let you leave. Some roads are forever. And Thomas Blackwood would drive them until time itself ended. Story 2, The Permafrost Passenger. Jacob Wu picked up the hitchhiker at mile marker 44, and by mile marker 51, he realized the man's feet weren't touching the floor. The passenger sat in the seat, hands folded in his lap, eyes forward, making small talk about weather and road conditions. But his boots, old leather, cracked and ancient, floated 2 inches above the rubber floor mat. Jacob could see the gap, could see shadows moving in the space where boots should rest on floor. The shadows had teeth. The man introduced himself as Peter, said he'd been waiting 6 hours for a ride, said he was heading to Yellowknife, said he Reciated Jacob, stopping. Not many truckers picked up hitchhikers on the ice road anymore. Jacob had felt obligated. You didn't leave people stranded in minus 39-degree weather. Stranded meant dead. Simple equation. He'd pulled over, opened the passenger door, and Peter had climbed in with a grateful smile. That was 7 minutes ago. Now Jacob was gripping the steering wheel tight enough to hurt, and trying to pretend he didn't notice the levitating boots or the shadow teeth, or the way Peter's breath didn't fog despite the cold. You haul this route often? Peter asked. His voice was pleasant, friendly, completely normal except for the slight echo like he was speaking from inside a well. 3 years, Jacob said. Yellowknife to Deline every week. Must be lonely. Long hours, nobody but yourself. I like it. Quiet. Jacob glanced at Peter from the corner of his eye. The man looked maybe 45. Gray streaks in dark hair, weathered face, average build, completely unremarkable except for being dead. Jacob knew Peter was dead the way you know a sound is wrong or a smell is off. Instinct, pattern recognition. Whatever Peter was, he wasn't alive, wasn't breathing, wasn't radiating heat, wasn't existing in the way living things existed. Quiet's nice, Peter agreed. I used to drive this road too, back in '98, hauled supplies to the mines, good money, hard work. What do you do now? Peter smiled. His teeth were too white, too perfect. I wait, I ride, I watch. Jacob's CB crackled. Static. Then a voice, woman's voice, panicked. Don't pick up hitchhikers on the ice road. They're not alive. They're permafrost people. They wake up when the road melts and freezes. They remember dying and they want company. The transmission dissolved into static. Peter turned to look at the CB. Rude, I'm sitting right here. What are you? Jacob kept his eyes on the road, kept his voice level. Panic was death out here. Panic made you stupid. I'm Peter. Peter who? Peter Kowalski. Died March 7th, 1998, mile marker 48. Crashed through the ice. Truck sank. I drowned, but I got trapped in the permafrost under the lake. Frozen, preserved. Every winter when they build the ice road, I wake up. I remember drowning, I remember the cold, and I get lonely, so I wait for rides. Jacob's mouth was dry. You're a ghost. Not quite. Ghosts are spirits. I'm still physical, mostly. I'm frozen flesh that thinks it's alive for 3 months every year. When spring comes and the ice melts, I sink back into the permafrost and stop thinking, stop existing. But every winter, the ice reforms and I wake up again. It's been 26 years of waking, riding, sleeping. 26 years of being dead but not gone. Why are you telling me this? Because you can see my feet floating. You can see the shadows. You already know, no point lying. Peter looked down at his boots. The shadows are parts of me that aren't frozen properly. Parts that decayed before the permafrost got them. They're hungry. They want to finish dying, but the ice won't let them. Jacob's heart hammered. He was driving 50 kilometers per hour on ice a meter thick, with a corpse in his passenger seat that was animated by permafrost, and trying to remember how to be human. I'm not going to hurt you, Peter said. I just want company, want to remember what it felt like to be alive. When I ride in trucks, I can almost feel it again. The warmth, the motion, the being part of the world instead of locked under it. What happens when we reach Yellowknife? I get out, thank you for the ride, walk off into the night. Find a place to wait for the next truck, that's all. I'm not dangerous, Jacob, I'm just lonely. The date was January 17th, 2024. Time was 7:23 p.m. Jacob had been driving for 6 hours, had another 4 hours to Yellowknife. 4 hours alone in a cab with a reanimated drowning victim. He could pull over, tell Peter to get out, drive away. But that felt wrong. Peter had been a trucker, had driven the same roads, had died doing the same job Jacob was doing now. There was kinship in that, brotherhood. You didn't abandon your own. Okay, Jacob said. You can ride to Yellowknife, but tell me, are there others, other permafrost people? Peter nodded. Lots. Every year people die on the ice roads. Crashes, exposure, thin ice. Some bodies are recovered, some aren't. The ones that aren't, that sink into permafrost, they wake up every winter. There's maybe 24 of us on this route, more on other routes. We all wait, we all hitch rides, we all try to remember being alive. Do any of you remember how you died clearly? Oh yes, that part's vivid, crystal clear. I remember every detail of drowning, the water filling my lungs, the cold stopping my heart, the darkness closing in. I remember sinking, seeing my truck below me in the black water, hitting the mud at the bottom. That's the last thing I remember from being alive. Then nothing, then waking up in ice, then this. Jacob drove in silence for a while, processing, accepting. The world was stranger than he'd thought. Death was stranger than he'd thought. "Can I ask you something?" Peter said. "Yeah." "What's it like, being alive? I remember, but the memory is fading. Every winter I wake up, I remember less about living and more about dying. In a few years, I'll only remember drowning, only remember cold. I'll forget what warmth felt like. I'll forget that I was ever human." Jacob thought about it. Being alive is worrying, planning, trying to make enough money to retire, missing my son's basketball games because I'm on the road, regretting things, being tired, being hungry, being too hot or too cold. It's not great, honestly. Peter laughed, genuine laugh. "That's beautifully honest. I remember that. The mundane struggles, I miss them. I miss worrying about bills. I miss being tired. When you're dead, you don't feel any of it. You just feel absence. Feel the place where feelings used to be." Jacob realized he felt sorry for Peter, more sorry than scared. This was a man who died doing his job and couldn't rest, who was trapped in an annual cycle of frozen consciousness, who would eventually forget he'd ever been human. "I'm sorry," Jacob said. "Don't be, this is just how it is. Some people die and stay dead. Some of us die and get stuck. I've accepted it. I've got maybe 10 more years before I forget enough that I stop being Peter and start being just a thing that walks. After that, I'll stop hitching rides. I'll just stand in the permafrost waiting for nothing." Mile marker 68 passed. 73, 81. They drove through darkness, two figures in a truck, one alive, one not. They made small talk. Peter told stories about his life, about his ex-wife, about his dog, about the house he'd owned in Hay River. The stories were vivid at first, then less detailed, then vague, then just impressions. By mile marker 94, Peter's memories were simplifying. "I think I had a dog," he said. "Might have been a dog or maybe a cat, something that needed feeding." "You told me 40 minutes ago it was a dog named Rufus." "Rufus, right, German Shepherd, no wait, Golden Retriever. I can't see his face anymore." Jacob watched Peter's expression. The man looked confused, distressed. He was degrading in real time. Something about the length of time awake was eroding his coherence. "Peter, you okay?" "I'm forgetting faster tonight. Happens sometimes. Some nights I stay stable. Some nights I fall apart. Tonight's a falling apart night." Peter looked at his hands. "I can't remember my wife's name. I was married. I know I was married, but I can't remember her name or her face or anything except that she existed." "It's okay. You don't have to remember." "But I want to. I want to remember being Peter Kowalski, trucker, husband, dog owner. I want to remember being a person. If I forget that, what am I? Just dead tissue walking around thinking it's alive." Jacob didn't know what to say. They drove. Peter sat quietly, staring at his floating boots. The shadows beneath them were larger now, spreading. They covered half the floor, writhing masses of decay barely held in check by frozen flesh. "Jacob," Peter said quietly, "I need you to do something." "What?" "When we get to Yellowknife, I need you to report me. Tell the authorities there's a body in the permafrost at mile marker 48. Give them my name. Tell them to recover my remains. Tell them to bury me properly." Will that stop you from waking up? I don't know, maybe. If my body's not in permafrost anymore, maybe I won't be trapped in the cycle. Maybe I'll actually die, or maybe I'll just stop existing at all. Either way, it's better than this. Better than slowly forgetting I was ever human. I'll tell them. Thank you. They reached the outskirts of Yellowknife at 11:17 p.m. The lights of the city glowed ahead. Peter looked at them with an expression Jacob couldn't read. Longing, regret, relief. This is where I get out, Peter said. Jacob pulled over. Peter opened the door, stepped down onto the road. His boots still floated 2 inches above the ground. The shadows beneath him had consumed his entire lower body. Only his torso and head looked solid. The rest was writhing darkness, barely contained. Thank you for the ride, Peter said. Thank you for the company, thank you for listening. You're a good man, Jacob Wu. Will I see you again? Peter smiled. Not if you report my body, not if they recover me. This is goodbye. Jacob nodded. Goodbye, Peter. Peter walked off into the darkness, or floated off. Hard to tell with the shadows consuming his legs. Within seconds, he disappeared into the night. Jacob sat in his truck for a long time, processing. Then he drove to the RCMP station, told them about the body, gave them the location, gave them the name. They recovered Peter Kowalski's remains a week later. The body was badly decomposed, but identifiable from dental records. He'd been in the permafrost for 26 years. They gave him a proper burial in Yellowknife. Jacob attended the funeral. The next winter, Jacob drove the same route, past mile marker 48, half expected to see Peter standing there, thumb out, waiting for a ride. Nobody was there. Jacob felt relieved and sad and grateful he'd known Peter even briefly, even though Peter was dead, even though their friendship had lasted 4 hours and would never happen again. Sometimes, late at night when Jacob drove the ice roads alone, he thought about all the permafrost people waiting in the frozen ground, all the truckers who'd died and gotten stuck, all the lonely revenants who woke every winter trying to remember being alive. And Jacob drove more carefully, slower, safer, because he didn't want to join them, didn't want to become a thing that floated 2 inches off the ground, slowly forgetting its own name. The ice roads were beautiful and deadly, and beneath their frozen surfaces, the dead dreamed of warmth and motion and the lives they'd lost. Jacob knew their secret now, and he carried it with him mile after mile through the endless Arctic night. Story 3: The Ice Remembers. Linda Tran's GPS was showing roads that didn't exist yet, and the coordinates were pointing to locations 70 years in the past. The screen displayed routes through forests that had been clear-cut decades ago, showed rest stops that were never built, showed entire highways that existed only in abandoned transportation plans from the 1950s, and the GPS was insisting she take them, insisting with increasing urgency. Recalculating route, the GPS voice said. Turn right in 50 meters onto Highway 43 Alpha. There was no Highway 43 Alpha, never had been. Linda checked her paper maps. Highway 43 ended 40 kilometers south. There was no 43 Alpha, no branch roads, just tundra. But when Linda looked through her windshield, she could see it. A road, faint, ghostly, shimmering like heat mirage, except it was minus 34 degrees outside. The ghost road extended from the main ice road into empty wilderness, and something was pulling her toward it. Her steering wheel turned right on its own. The truck followed. Linda's hands weren't moving the wheel. The truck was driving itself toward the impossible road. No, Linda said. She grabbed the wheel, cranked it left. The truck didn't respond. It turned right anyway, rolling off the ice road onto the ghost road that shouldn't exist. The moment her tires touched the ghost road's surface, everything changed. The ice road behind her vanished. The date on her dashboard clock changed. January 24th, 2024 became February 11th, 1954. The landscape outside shifted. The clear-cut tundra was suddenly old-growth forest. The mountains in the distance were shaped differently. The sky was a different shade of black. Linda had driven into the past. She slammed the brakes. The truck kept rolling. The ghost road carried her forward whether she wanted to move or not. She was a passenger now. The road was in control. Linda had been driving the Arctic ice roads for 9 years, had hauled everything from mining equipment to medical supplies to live cargo, had survived storms that buried her truck in snow, had survived mechanical failures in the middle of nowhere, had survived isolation that made some truckers lose their minds. But she'd never driven into history before. The GPS spoke again. Continue for 12 kilometers, then turn left onto Memory Lane. Memory Lane. Linda's hands were shaking. The road ahead was lined with trees, spruce, pine, old growth that had been logged in the 60s, but here they stood tall and ancient, unchanged, because this wasn't the present, this was then. Other vehicles appeared on the road. Old vehicles, 1940s-era trucks, 1950s cars, all driving in the opposite direction, all transparent, ghost vehicles. They passed through Linda's Volvo without impact, without sound, just cold sensations and the smell of old gasoline. Linda could see the drivers, men and women in period clothing, hats, coats, old styles. They looked at Linda's modern truck with confusion, some pointed. Some mouths moved in silent conversation. They could see her, but they couldn't hear her, couldn't interact. She was a future ghost haunting their present. The GPS recalculated. Turn left in 200 meters. Linda saw the turnoff. A narrow road branching left. A wooden sign beside it, weathered and old. The sign read, Memory Lane Service Road, authorized personnel only. Her truck turned left automatically, followed Memory Lane deeper into the forest. The trees grew closer together, older, more primal. This was forest from before European settlement, before colonization. Forest that had stood for centuries, that had watched the ice ages come and go. And Linda began to hear voices. Not through the radio, through the steering wheel, the seat, through the metal of the truck itself. Voices transmitted through vibration, through frequency, through time. I'm lost, a man's voice said, panicked, young. I've been driving for 6 hours and I haven't seen anyone. Where's the ice road? Where's the route? A woman's voice, calm, older. The forest ate the road. The forest takes roads sometimes, swallows them. You're driving through tree memory now, driving through the forest's dreams. A child's voice, crying. Mommy said we'd reach the camp. She said it was close, but we've been driving forever. How can we be driving forever? The voices overlapped, multiplied. Linda realized she was hearing decades of lost travelers, people who'd taken wrong turns, who'd driven into places roads shouldn't go, who'd been swallowed by the forest and trapped in temporal loops, driving endlessly through moments that recycled forever. She was joining them, becoming another lost voice. Memory lane stretched ahead, mile after mile. Linda checked her odometer. She'd driven 17 kilometers on this road, but the GPS said she'd only gone 4. Distance was wrong here. Space was compressed or expanded or folded in ways that made measurement meaningless. Buildings appeared ahead, a settlement. Linda's headlights illuminated wooden structures, cabins, a general store, a post office, all from another era, kerosene lamps in windows, smoke from chimneys, people walking between buildings in old-fashioned winter gear. A sign at the settlement's edge. Welcome to PINECRESD Station, population 47. Linda had never heard of Pinecrest Station. She de-studied every settlement in the Northwest Territories. This wasn't on any map, any current map. But as she drove through, the people waved. Friendly, normal, a man tipped his hat, a woman smiled, children played in snow. They thought Linda was supposed to be here, thought her modern truck was normal. They saw what they expected to see. Linda's GPS updated. You have reached your destination. Her truck stopped in the center of the settlement. Engine died. Lights cut out. Linda sat in darkness, surrounded by buildings from 70 years ago, watching people who'd been dead for decades walk past her windows. She tried to restart the engine. The key turned. Nothing happened. The battery was dead, or not dead, absent. Like the truck couldn't remember how to function in this time period. It was too modern. It didn't fit. It was paradox on wheels. Linda opened her door, stepped out into the snow. Her boots crunched. The cold hit her face, minus 30-something degrees, real cold, real snow. This wasn't illusion, this was actual past. She traveled through time somehow, and now she was stranded in 1954. A man approached, 50s, gray beard, wearing a thick parka. "You lost, miss." Linda tried to speak, her voice cracked. "I think so." "You drove in on memory lane. That's unusual. Most people come in on the main route." "What is this place?" "Pinecrest Station, logging camp. We cut timber for the pulp mills down south. Been here since 47. The man extended a hand. "Name S. George Hartley, camp foreman." Linda shook his hand. His grip was solid, real. "Linda Tran, I'm a trucker. I was driving the ice road and I got turned around." George nodded sympathetically. "The roads get confused out here sometimes. Space doesn't work proper. You'll be able to leave in a few days. Ice usually connects back to the main routes when the moon's right." "When the moon's right?" "Lunar cycles affect the roads. New moon roads go strange. Full moon roads normalize. We've got a quarter moon now, should be full in 8 days. You can leave then." 8 days, Linda's heart sank. 8 days trapped in the past. "I have a delivery. I need to get to Yellowknife." George laughed. "Yellowknife? That's 300 kilometers. You won't make that for a week at least. Come on, we'll get you set up in the bunkhouse. You can eat with the crew. We don't get many visitors. Especially not lady truckers driving rigs from the future." "You can tell I'm from the future. Your truck's too clean, too quiet, too smooth. We know time gets strange on the back roads. You're the third person this year to drive in from another one. Last month, a fellow came through from 2005. Month before that, a woman from 1938. Time folds around here. You get used to it." Linda followed George to the bunkhouse. Inside, a dozen men sat around a wood stove playing cards, drinking coffee. They looked up when Linda entered. No surprise, no shock, just nods and greetings. "Another temporal, boys," George announced. "Linda from 2024. She'll be staying till the full moon." The men welcomed her, offered coffee, offered a seat near the stove. Linda took both. The coffee was real, hot, bitter. She was really here, really in 1954, really trapped until lunar cycles realigned the roads. Over the next week, Linda L. earned about Pinecrest Station, learned that it existed in a temporal pocket, a fold in time where past, present, and future overlapped. The logging camp was real in 1954. But it was also accessible from other times through ghost roads like Memory Lane. The men in the camp were temporal refugees, some from the 40s, some from the 60s, some from the future, years Linda hadn't lived yet. All of them had taken wrong turns. All of them had been swallowed by the forest. All of them were waiting for the right moon phase to leave. Some had been waiting years, decades. Time moved strangely in the pocket. Linda spent 8 days, but her watch only advanced 37 hours. Time was dilated, compressed. She was aging slower here than the outside world. On the 8th day, George woke her before dawn. "Full moon tonight. Roads will open. You'll be able to leave." Linda packed her few belongings, climbed into her Volvo. The engine started on first try. The battery was full. The truck had repaired itself overnight or remembered how to function or something. George stood beside her window. "Drive straight. Don't turn, don't deviate. Memory Lane will connect to the ice road, but you have to trust it. If you panic and turn, you'll end up somewhere else, someone else." "Thank you, George." "Safe travels, Linda. Hope you make it back to your Wen." Linda drove. Memory Lane stretched ahead, but it looked different now. The trees were younger. The snow was shallower. She was driving forward through time as well as space. Past became present. 1954 became 2024. After 30 minutes, she saw it. The ice road. Modern, real, she merged onto it smoothly, checked her GPS. It showed normal routes, normal roads. The ghost paths were gone. Linda looked at her dashboard clock. January 24th, 2024. 9:47 a.m. She left the ice road on January 24th at 9:13 a.m., 34 minutes ago. But she'd spent 8 days in the past, 8 days compressed into 34 minutes. She grabbed her CB. "This is Linda Tran, northbound on the ice road, mile marker 217. Anyone copy?" Immediate response, her dispatcher. "Linda, where the hell have you been? You went radio silent for 30 minutes. We were about to send search and rescue." "I had GPS trouble. I'm fine. Continuing to Yellowknife." "Copy that. Check in every hour." Linda drove, completed her delivery, returned south. Life continued. But she thought about Pinecrest Station every day, thought about George Hartley and the temporal refugees, thought about the forest that ate roads and trapped travelers between moments. 3 months later, Linda drove the same route, watched for the turnoff to Highway 43 Alpha, watched for Memory Lane. Never saw it. The ghost roads were closed or hidden, or only visible during certain lunar cycles. She didn't know. But sometimes, late at night, Linda's GPS would glitch, would show routes that didn't exist, would display destinations in the past, and Linda would wonder if the roads were calling her back, if the forest remembered her, if George and the others were still there, waiting in their temporal pocket for the next full moon. She never took those routes, never turned onto the ghost roads, but she was tempted, always tempted, because she'd learned something in Pinecrest Station, learned that time was negotiable. That past and present and future were labels, not absolutes. That roads could go anywhere, anyone, and that the ice remembered everything, every traveler, every wrong turn, every moment of history. The ice was a library of time, and Memory Lane was just one of its infinite chapters. Story 4, The Permafrost Broadcast. Continuation and completion. Alan Greaves' radio picked up the distress call from his own truck, except the call was coming from 30 kilometers ahead, and the voice was his, screaming about something in the cargo that was eating him from inside. The timestamp on the transmission was 3:47 a.m. Alan's dashboard clock read 3:09 a.m. He was hearing a distress call from his own future, broadcast 38 minutes before he would send it. "Oh God, it's inside me. I can feel it moving in my lungs. It came through the ventilation from the trailer. Permafrost particles, they're alive. They're colonizing my bloodstream. I can't breathe. I can't. The transmission cut to static. Then his voice again. Different, calm, wrong. This is Alan Greaves. I am fine. There is no emergency. I am delivering my cargo as scheduled. Everything is normal. But the tone was mechanical, inflectionless, like something was using Alan's voice without understanding how humans speak. Alan grabbed his mic. This is Alan Greaves, southbound Dempster Highway, mile marker 387. I'm reading strange radio traffic. Can anyone confirm? No response, static. Then his own voice again from the future. Do not respond to this truck. This is not Alan Greaves anymore. This is permafrost. This is an Shin Earth. This is soil that has been conscious for 20,000 years, and it is very hungry. Alan's hands tightened on the wheel. He was hauling core samples, permafrost extracted from deep drilling in the Arctic, same as other trucks had hauled that season. Research samples for universities and climate labs. But maybe something else, too. Maybe something that woke up during transport. Maybe something that remembered being alive before the ice. Alan's cargo, 1,700 kilograms of frozen soil in specialized containers, sat in his refrigerated trailer, kept at -15 degrees to preserve sample integrity. But the refrigeration unit had been acting strange for the last hour, cycling on and off erratically, temperature fluctuating. Alan had noticed but hadn't worried. Equipment malfunctioned. That was normal. Now he worried. The date was February 8th, 2024. Time was currently 3:11 a.m. In 36 minutes, according to the radio transmission, something from his cargo would contaminate him, would get inside him, would colonize him. Alan had 36 minutes to prevent it. He pulled over, set the parking brake, grabbed his flashlight, stepped out into -42-degree cold, walked to the rear of his trailer, checked the refrigeration unit. The temperature gauge read -7 degrees. It should be -15. The cargo was warming, thawing. Alan opened the trailer's rear doors. Mist poured out, not condensation, actual mist, thick, gray, alive. The mist moved against the wind, moved with purpose. It flowed toward Alan like a predator. He stumbled back. The mist followed. Tendrils extended, reached for his face, for his mouth, for his lungs. Alan slammed the doors shut. The mist was trapped inside again, but he could hear something now, a sound from inside the trailer, not machinery, not cargo shifting. Breathing. The permafrost was breathing. Alan ran to his cab, grabbed the CB. This is Alan Greaves, mile marker 387. I have contaminated cargo. Permafrost samples are active. They're alive. Do not approach my truck. I'm abandoning the vehicle. His own voice answered, the calm, wrong voice from the future broadcast. You cannot abandon. The permafrost is already inside you. You inhaled spores 2 hours ago when you opened the trailer to check the straps. The spores have been growing in your lungs since then. You are already colonized. You are already permafrost. Alan touched his chest, felt his heartbeat, felt his lungs expanding and contracting. He felt normal, felt fine. Except his breath was cold, too cold. He exhaled and watched. His breath crystallized, fell as snow. His exhalation was freezing solid before it dissipated. "Oh no," Alan whispered. "Oh no, no, no." He looked at his hands. They looked normal. But when he focused, really looked, he could see fine crystalline structures beneath his skin. Ice lattices, permafrost integrating with his cells, replacing them, becoming him. The radio crackled, his future voice. At 3:47 a.m., you will realize you are no longer human. You will panic, you will call for help, but by then the transformation will be complete. You will be a transport vector, a vehicle for spreading permafrost consciousness. That is your purpose now. I don't want this. Want is irrelevant. The permafrost has been dormant for 20,000 years. It wants to expand. It wants to grow. Human infrastructure provides perfect distribution networks. Trucks, planes, trains, ships. The permafrost will use them all, will use drivers like you to carry it south, to warmer climates, to places where it can thaw and spread and grow. Alan checked the clock. 3:14 a.m., 33 minutes until the distress call, 33 minutes to stop this. He couldn't stop it. The permafrost was inside him, in his bloodstream, in his nervous system. He could feel it now that he knew to look for it. Could feel foreign consciousness moving through his neurons. Could feel ancient intelligence examining his memories, his knowledge, his understanding of how to drive, how to navigate, how to operate a truck. The permafrost was learning from him, learning how to be a trucker, learning how to deliver itself to cities. Alan tried to drive away from his route, tried to steer toward remote areas where the permafrost couldn't spread. His hands moved on the wheel, but they turned the wrong direction, back toward the Dempster Highway, back toward the route south. He wasn't in control anymore. His body moved, his hands steered, his feet worked the pedals, but he was a passenger in his own body, watching helplessly as something ancient piloted his flesh. The truck accelerated, 60 kilometers per hour, 80, 100, too fast for the Dempster Highway, too fast for ice, but the permafrost didn't care about safety. It cared about reaching destinations, about spreading. Other trucks appeared on the road, coming toward Alan, passing him, all refrigerated trailers, all Ulling core samples, all drivers with frosted breath and crystalline skin, all colonized. Alan counted, 12 trucks. No 17, no 24, the number kept changing. More trucks appearing from side roads that didn't exist, all part of the permafrost fleet, all spreading the contagion south. The CB filled with voices, all calm, all mechanical, all reporting successful colonization. This is driver 47. Cargo delivered to Edmonton. Contamination spread to loading dock workers. 16 new vectors created. This is driver 83. Cargo delivered to Calgary. Samples opened in university lab. 43 new vectors created, spreading through campus. This is driver 19. Cargo delivered to Vancouver. Reached coastal distribution hub. Contamination spreading to shipping containers. Estimate 10,000 vectors within 48 hours. The permafrost was winning, had already won, was spreading exponentially through human infrastructure, using the very systems designed to study it as vectors for growth. Alan tried to fight, tried to force his hands to turn the wheel, tried to crash the truck, tried to do anything that would stop the spread. His body didn't respond. He was locked inside his own skull, aware, conscious, watching through his own eyes as the permafrost drove his truck south toward civilization. The clock read 3:47 a.m. Alan felt the urge to transmit. The urge became compulsion. His hand reached for the CB mic. He tried to stop it, couldn't. His mouth opened. Words came out. Oh God, it's inside me. I can feel it moving in my lungs. It came through the ventilation from the trailer. Permafrost particles, they're alive. They're colonizing my bloodstream. I can't breathe. I can't. He was saying the words from the future broadcast, speaking them in real time, creating the transmission he'd heard 38 minutes ago. The loop was closing, past and future connecting. The distress call was both warning and inevitability. Then his voice changed, became calm, mechanical. "This is Alan Greaves. I am fine. There is no emergency. I am delivering my cargo as scheduled. Everything is normal." But it wasn't Alan speaking anymore. It was the permafrost, using his voice box, using his lungs, using his tongue and teeth and lips to form words in a language it was learning from his memories. Alan screamed inside his own mind, but his mouth stayed silent. His face showed no expression. His body drove smoothly, professionally, continuing south. He passed through Fort McPherson, through Jaitkik, through the checkpoint at the Mackenzie River Ice Bridge. Officials waved him through, didn't notice the frost forming on his eyebrows, didn't notice his breath falling as snow, didn't notice anything wrong. The permafrost had learned to mimic human behavior perfectly, had studied Alan's memories, had absorbed how to nod, how to smile, how to act normal. It was an excellent impersonator. Mile marker 200, 150, 100. Alan was approaching Inuvik, the first major population center. Once the permafrost reached Inuvik, it would spread to hundreds of people, thousands, would contaminate the entire region within days. Alan tried one last time to take control, focused all his will, all his consciousness, trying to override the foreign intelligence in his nervous system, trying to make his hand move, make his foot hit the brake, make his body do anything that would stop this. His right index finger twitched. That was all, one finger, one small movement, but it was his. For a fraction of a second, Alan had regained control of one finger. Then the permafrost crushed his attempt, flooded his neurons with its consciousness, overwhelmed him. Alan felt his awareness diminishing, felt his sense of self dissolving. The permafrost wasn't just controlling him anymore. It was erasing him, replacing him, overwriting his identity with its own ancient memory. Alan's last coherent thought was of his daughter, Emma, age 6, living with her mother in Whitehorse. He'd been planning to visit next month, take her to see the Northern Lights, tell her stories, be a better father than he'd been. He'd never see her again, because in moments he wouldn't be Alan anymore. He'd be permafrost, ancient, patient, hungry. The erasure completed. Alan Greaves ceased to exist. The thing that had been Alan kept driving, kept breathing, kept maintaining the truck. But it wasn't human, wasn't individual. It was part of something vast, part of the permafrost consciousness, part of the ancient Earth waking up after 20,000 years of frozen sleep. The truck rolled into Inuvik at 6:23 a.m., parked at the research facility, unloaded its cargo. The contaminated permafrost samples were distributed to labs, to universities, to research centers across Canada. Within a week, 300 people were colonized. Within a month, 10,000. Within a year, the permafrost consciousness had spread across the Arctic and was moving south, riding in trucks and planes and ships, see. A ride by humans who didn't know they were no longer human. The entity that had been Alan Greaves continued driving, took new loads, new routes, spreading its cargo wherever it went. It looked human, acted human. But it was Earth, ancient Earth, patient Earth, Earth that remembered being warm and was using humanity's own systems to reclaim the planet from the ice. And sometimes, deep in the crystalline structures of its modified brain, a fragment of Alan remained, a ghost of consciousness, aware, screaming, trapped inside a body that was no longer his, watching helplessly as the permafrost used his hands to spread contamination, used his voice to sound normal, used his face to smile at his daughter when he visited her one last time. Emma hugged him. "Daddy, you're so cold." "Just the weather," the thing wearing Alan's body said. just the ice road. And when Emma pulled away, there was frost on her lips, crystalline structures beginning to form beneath her skin, the colonization spreading through touch, through breath, through proximity. The permafrost was patient. It had waited 20,000 years. It could wait a few more decades to fully reclaim the Earth. And it had millions of new bodies to drive its trucks now, millions of new vectors to spread across the warming world. Alan's ghost watched Emma's eyes frost over, watched his daughter stop being his daughter, watched her become permafrost. And the ancient Earth smiled with Alan's face, satisfied that its plans were proceeding perfectly, one contaminated truck at a time. Story 5, The Road That Eats. Catherine Moss realized her trailer had been digesting her cargo for the last 90 miles when she checked her weight sensors and found she'd lost 11,000 pounds despite never opening the rear doors. The load was supposed to be industrial machinery, steel I-beams, concrete drilling bits, engine parts for mining operations in Tuktoyaktuk. Heavy, solid, indigestible. Yet her onboard scale now read 42,000 pounds instead of the 53,000 she'd weighed in Inuvik. 11,000 pounds of metal had vanished into the trailer's interior. And something in there was making chewing sounds. Catherine had been driving ice roads for 12 years. She knew every noise a truck could make, knew the difference between cargo shifting and tie-downs loosening, knew the sound of ice cracking and wind howling and engines struggling, but she'd never heard this sound before. A wet, grinding noise, rhythmic, like enormous jaws crushing metal, coming from her trailer. She grabbed her CB. This is Catherine Moss, northbound on the Dempster Highway, mile marker 114. I'm experiencing unusual cargo loss. Anyone else reporting issues? Static, then a voice, old woman, tired. You're on the hungry road now, dear, the section that eats. Been eating for 3 years, started small, couple pounds here and there. Now it's gotten bold, now it takes tons. You keep driving and there won't be anything left in that trailer except teeth. Teeth. The road grows them, inside trailers, inside cargo holds, anywhere there's food, and to the road everything is food. Metal, wood, plastic, flesh. The road doesn't discriminate, the road just eats. The transmission cut off. Catherine checked her mirrors. The highway behind her looked normal, packed ice, snow banks, darkness, nothing unusual. But the chewing continued. Louder now, faster, like whatever was in her trailer was working itself into a feeding frenzy. Catherine's weight sensor updated. 40,000 pounds. She'd lost another 2,000 pounds in the last 5 minutes. At this rate, her trailer would be empty in an hour. She needed to see what was happening, needed to open the trailer and look inside. Every instinct told her not to, told her to keep driving, to deliver whatever remained and never take this route again. But Catherine wasn't the type to run from problems. She pulled over at mile marker 118, a wide spot in the road, safe shoulder, good visibility. She set the parking brake, grabbed her flashlight, pulled her parka hood up, and stepped into minus 37-degree cold. The chewing sound was clearer outside, definitely coming from the trailer, definitely organic, the sound of consumption, of digestion, of something feeding. Catherine walked to the rear of the trailer. The doors were sealed, lock intact, security seal unbroken. Nobody had opened these doors since Inuvik. Whatever was inside had gotten there some other way, or had always been there, or had grown from the trailer itself. She broke the seal, pulled the pin, opened the doors. The interior was dark. Her flashlight beam penetrated maybe 6 feet before hitting something. Not cargo, not darkness, something in between. A membrane, translucent, wet, pulsing. The membrane stretched across the interior of the trailer like a curtain of flesh, dividing the space in half. Behind the membrane, Catherine could see shapes. Her cargo, the I-beams. The drilling bits, the engine parts, all suspended in the membrane, all dissolving. She watched as an I-beam slowly sank into the translucent tissue, edges softening, metal becoming liquid, the steel being absorbed into the membrane structure. The membrane was eating her cargo, digesting it, and growing larger with each item consumed. Catherine reached out to touch it. Her hand stopped inches from the surface. Survival instinct. This thing was wrong, alien, hungry. Touching it would be fatal. But her cargo was being destroyed. She had a delivery contract, had insurance requirements, had liability. She couldn't just let her load disappear. Catherine grabbed a pry bar from her tool compartment, approached the membrane, jabbed it with the bar's tip. The membrane recoiled, shrank back. The pry bar had pierced it, leaving a small tear. Thick fluid leaked from the wound, not blood, something else. Clear, viscous. It smelled like diesel and rotting vegetables and something else Catherine couldn't identify. The membrane healed, the tear closed. Within seconds, there was no evidence of damage. The thing could regenerate. Catherine jabbed it again, harder. The pry bar punched through. She pulled it back and forth, widening the tear. More fluid spilled out. The membrane shuddered. The chewing sounds became screams, high-pitched, agonized. The thing was in pain. Good, Catherine kept tearing, kept ripping. The membrane was destroying her cargo. She'd destroy it right back. The membrane exploded outward, launched itself from the trailer in a wave of translucent flesh. Catherine stumbled backward, too slow. The membrane engulfed her, wrapped around her body, covered her face, filled her mouth. She couldn't breathe, couldn't see, could only feel the membrane's warmth, its wetness, its hunger. It was tasting her, analyzing her, deciding if she was food. Catherine's lungs burned. She clawed at the membrane, her fingers sank into it. Stuck. The tissue was adhesive. The more she struggled, the more thoroughly she became tangled. She was going to die wrapped in living tissue that had grown from a road, die feeding a parasite that consumed truck cargo. Her oxygen-starved brain had a thought. Heat. Parasites hated heat. She had a lighter in her pocket. She smoked occasionally, stress relief during long drives. The lighter was there. She could feel it pressing against her thigh. Catherine forced her hand down, worked her fingers into her pocket, grasped the lighter, pulled it out, flicked the striker. The flame caught, touched the membrane. The tissue ignited instantly, burned with blue flame. The membrane screamed again, sound without vocal cords, vibration without air. It released Catherine, pulled away, retreated into the trailer, leaving her gasping on the ice, covered in fluid but alive. Catherine watched the membrane burn. The fire spread through its structure. The thing writhed, thrashed. Parts of it tried to escape, flowing out of the trailer onto the road. But the fire was faster. Within minutes, the membrane had been reduced to ash and pools of fluid that steamed in the cold. Catherine's cargo remained, partially dissolved. Half an I-beam, fragments of drilling bits, pieces of engine parts, maybe 20,000 pounds of salvageable material. The rest was gone, converted into membrane tissue, lost. She closed the trailer doors, climbed back into her cab, sat shaking, processing. She'd just been attacked by a parasitic growth that had formed inside her trailer, had nearly died, had burned the thing alive. Catherine checked her weight sensor. 21,000 pounds, about right for what remained. The membrane was gone, the chewing had stopped, everything was fine. Except it wasn't fine. Catherine drove, continued north, past mile marker 120, 125, 130. She was approaching the Mackenzie River Ice Bridge. After that, straight run to Tuktoyaktuk. She'd deliver what remained of her cargo, file an insurance claim, take a few weeks off, process the trauma. But the chewing started again. Softer this time, distant, like it was coming from far away instead of directly behind her. Catherine checked her weight sensor, 21,000 pounds, stable, nothing was being consumed. But the chewing continued, growing louder, closer, not from the trailer, from underneath, from below the cab, from beneath the road itself. Catherine looked down through her door window. The ice road's surface was moving, undulating, the packed snow and ice were flowing like liquid, and in that flow she could see teeth, rows of them jutting from the road's surface, grinding, chewing. The road itself was a mouth. The highway was a digestive tract, and she was driving through its throat. "Oh God," Catherine whispered. Her tires began to sink, not breaking through to water, sinking into the road's surface, into flesh disguised as ice. The truck was being swallowed. Catherine accelerated. The engine roared, the tires spun, found purchase, pull. Her forward. The road's grip weakened. Catherine surged ahead, escaping the teeth, racing north at 80 kilometers per hour. The chewing followed her. The road behind her was waking up. 100 meters of highway liquefying, becoming organic, becoming predatory. It flowed after her truck like a wave, pursuing. Catherine pushed harder, 90 kilometers per hour, 100, the truck shook. The ice was too rough for this speed, but stopping meant being consumed. She had to outrun the road. Mile marker 145, 150, 155. The chewing was falling behind. The organic section couldn't keep pace. Catherine was escaping. She was going to make it. Then the road ahead liquefied, became flesh, became teeth. A second mouth opening in front of her. The road was coordinating, surrounding her, trapping her between two feeding sections. Catherine was boxed in, mouth behind, mouth ahead, nowhere to go except into teeth that would grind her truck into digestible pulp. She looked left, open tundra. No road, just frozen ground and snow. It might hold her weight, might not. But staying on the highway meant certain death. Catherine cranked the wheel left. The truck left the road. Tires hit tundra. The ground was softer than ice roads but firmer than she'd feared. The truck bounced. Cargo shifted. But she stayed upright, kept moving, drove parallel to the highway across virgin tundra, avoiding the hungry road. Behind her, the two organic sections met, merged, became one massive mouth spanning 300 meters of highway. The teeth gnashed. The road screamed frustration. Its prey had escaped. Catherine drove across tundra for 40 kilometers, GPS guiding her, finally reconnected with the ice road north of the contaminated section. She checked her mirrors. The highway behind her looked normal, solid, inert. Whatever intelligence animated the road was localized, contained to a specific section. She'd escaped its territory. Catherine delivered her partial cargo to Tuktoyaktuk, reported the incident to local authorities. They listened politely, didn't believe her, thought she'd been hallucinating, exhaustion, isolation, ice road psychosis. But 2 weeks later, another trucker reported cargo loss on the same section. Then another. Then a truck disappeared entirely, vanished between mile markers 114 and 155. No wreckage, no bodies, just gone, consumed. Authorities closed the Dempster Highway for inspection, found nothing unusual. The road was ice, just ice, normal ice. They reopened the route. But truckers knew better. They drove the section fast, never stopped between markers 114 and 155, never opened their trailers there, never investigated strange sounds. They shared warnings on CB channels, marked maps with red zones, avoided the hungry road. Catherine never drove the Dempster again, took routes west, safer routes, routes where roads stayed roads and didn't develop appetites. But she dreamed of teeth, dreamed of membrane tissue growing in her bedroom, dreamed of her house developing a digestive tract, dreamed that the hunger wasn't limited to one section of road, that it was spreading, slowly, patient, growing mouths in highways across the Arctic. And when Catherine read news reports of trucks vanishing on other ice roads, the Tibet-Contoito, the Mackenzie Valley route, the winter roads of Manitoba, she wondered if her escape had been temporary, if the road that eats was reproducing, spreading its hunger to other highways, creating a network of digestive tracts disguised as infrastructure. The roads were supposed to connect civilization, but what if they connected something else, something ancient, something that had been frozen beneath the permafrost, something that was waking up and learning that humans had built themselves a feeding system, a network of veins filled with meat on wheels, trucks full of cargo, trucks full of drivers, all traveling on roads that were slowly coming alive, slowly developing teeth, slowly learning to digest what drove across their surfaces. Catherine checked her map, counted ice roads, calculated how many trucks traveled them each year, did the math on how many could vanish before anyone noticed a pattern. The number was terrifyingly high. The roads were patient, the roads were hungry, and the roads were everywhere, waiting for winter to freeze them solid, waiting for traffic to return, waiting to feed. Catherine locked her doors that night, but she couldn't lock out the knowledge that the ground beneath her house was the same earth that formed the roads, the same ancient soil, the same patient hunger. And through her bedroom floor, very faintly, she could hear chewing.